Welcome to Space Nexus. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a landmark and highly anticipated decision, the Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's sweeping tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in imports, sending shockwaves through the political and next the ruling, which comes after months of legal battles and intense debate, marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle over presidential power and economic policy. The justices declared that the use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, as a justification for such broad and far-reaching taxes on foreign goods is unconstitutional. The court emphasized that while the president does have certain emergency powers, those powers are not unlimited and cannot be used to bypass the fundamental checks and balances set forth in the Constitution. This historic ruling dismantles a key pillar of the president's economic agenda, which relied heavily on tariffs to pressure foreign governments and protect American industries. It also reasserts Congress's exclusive authority over taxation and trade, reinforcing the principle that no single branch of government can act unilaterally in matters that affect the entire nation's economy. The global impact of the decision is immediate and far-reaching. International leaders and multinational corporations are now scrambling to assess the effects on global supply chains, trade agreements, and ongoing investments. Many countries that had imposed retaliatory tariffs are now reconsidering their own trade policies in light of the court's decision, while financial markets react to the sudden shift in U.S. trade strategy. For everyday Americans, the decision could mean lower prices on a wide range of goods, from electronics and clothing to groceries and household items. Consumers who have felt the pinch of higher prices due to tariffs may soon see some relief at the checkout counter as import costs begin to fall and competition increases. Small businesses, many of which have struggled to absorb the increased costs brought on by tariffs, are also expected to benefit. For these entrepreneurs and local shop owners, the court's decision offers a much-needed reprieve and the possibility of renewed growth and stability in their communities. The court's message is clear and resounding. Even in times of economic emergency, the president cannot bypass the Constitution's separation of powers. The decision reaffirms the importance of checks and balances, ensuring that no leader is above the law, regardless of the circumstances. As the nation absorbs this historic outcome, attention now turns to the practical fallout. Unwinding the tariffs, processing potential refunds for businesses and consumers, and navigating the political consequences for advocates of economic nationalism. The Supreme Court's ruling will shape the future of American trade policy for years to come. President Trump's tariff strategy relied on IEEPA, a 1977 law meant for targeted sanctions, not sweeping economic restructuring. No previous president had used IEEPA to impose global tariffs, making Trump's move a radical legal experiment. The administration argued that trade deficits and unfair practices were a national emergency, justifying unilateral action. Critics, including lawmakers from both parties, warned this bypassed Congress's explicit constitutional powers over taxes and trade. The central legal battle. Were these tariffs a regulatory measure or an unconstitutional tax imposed without congressional approval? The legal fight began at the grassroots level, with small businesses across the country feeling the first shockwaves of the new tariffs. Owners who had spent years building their livelihoods suddenly faced mounting uncertainty as the cost of imported goods and materials soared almost overnight. In response, a coalition formed, not of politicians, but of determined business owners and state governments. They came together, united by a shared concern: the tariffs' devastating economic impact on their communities, employees, and families. These businesses faced not just higher prices, but existential threats to their survival. Many were forced to make difficult choices, cutting staff, raising prices, or even closing their doors, just to stay afloat. Meanwhile, state officials argued that the tariffs were hurting not only business owners, but also everyday consumers. Local economies suffered as shoppers faced higher prices, and main streets emptied out, threatening the fabric of entire communities. Together, the coalition filed a lawsuit, claiming the president had exceeded his authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. They argued that only Congress has the exclusive power to tax and regulate commerce, and that the executive branch had overstepped its constitutional boundaries. The case advanced through the courts, drawing national attention. The Federal Circuit ultimately ruled that IEEPA did not clearly authorize such sweeping tariffs, raising fundamental questions about the separation of powers. The administration quickly appealed, warning that restricting presidential authority could weaken America's ability to respond to global crises and economic threats. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, setting the stage for a historic showdown over billions in tariffs and the very boundaries of executive power in times of emergency. Through tireless advocacy, public rallies, and media campaigns, the coalition transformed a business crisis into a defining constitutional battle, one that would impact not just their own futures, but the future of American governance. The outcome would clarify for generations to come the limits of presidential authority in trade, and the enduring balance of power between Congress and the executive branch. In a packed Supreme Court chamber, the Trump administration's legal team presented their case, arguing that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, commonly known as IEEPA, granted the president sweeping authority to address foreign economic threats. They emphasized that the law's broad language was intentionally designed to give the executive branch flexibility in times of crisis, including the power to impose tariffs as a tool of national security. The administration's lawyers insisted that tariffs, when used in response to international emergencies, should be seen as regulatory measures rather than traditional taxes. This distinction, they argued, placed such actions firmly within the president's constitutional powers, especially when swift action was needed to protect American interests. On the other side, the challengers, representing business groups and trade associations, forcefully countered that tariffs are, at their core, taxes on imports. They argued that the Constitution clearly reserves the power to levy taxes to Congress, not the president, and that allowing otherwise would upset the careful balance of powers. The challengers further contended that IEEPA was never meant to serve as a blanket authorization for imposing global import duties. They warned that such a broad interpretation would violate the non-delegation doctrine, which prohibits Congress from handing over its core legislative responsibilities to the executive branch without clear limits. The administration, however, pushed back, highlighting the unpredictable nature of international crises and the need for the president to act decisively. They argued that requiring lengthy congressional approval could hinder the nation's ability to respond to urgent threats, while the challengers maintained that only Congress should wield such vast economic power. The justices listened intently, aware that their decision would set a precedent for the limits of presidential authority. They faced a stark choice: should they empower the executive branch for rapid response in emergencies, or uphold the constitutional separation of powers and ensure Congress retains control over taxation and trade? The stakes were high, not just for the lawyers in the courtroom, but for American businesses, workers, and the very rule of law. The outcome would affect how future presidents could wield emergency powers and shape the nation's economic destiny. As the nation watched and waited, the Supreme Court prepared to issue a decision that would define the boundaries of emergency presidential power for generations to come. The justices' questions revealed deep skepticism about the administration's expansive claims. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Gorsuch stressed that taxing authority belongs to Congress, not the president. Justice Barrett questioned the legitimacy of declaring a national emergency to justify tariffs on allies. Liberal justices, led by Sotomayor, rejected the idea that tariffs could be rebranded as regulation, calling them direct taxes on Americans. Some justices, like Kavanaugh and Alito, explored whether Congress had intentionally given the president broad emergency powers. The bench was clearly divided between preserving congressional authority and equipping the presidency for global challenges. The outcome would hinge on how the court balanced these competing constitutional principles. The Supreme Court's decision is an economic earthquake, promising lower prices for consumers and relief for small businesses. For a year, tariffs drove up costs on everything from electronics to cars, fueling inflation and straining family budgets. Small businesses, unable to absorb the costs, faced layoffs and closures. Now, they can operate with renewed stability. The administration must unwind the tariff regime and may owe billions in refunds to importers, with major fiscal implications. The ruling also disrupts trade negotiations, as foreign governments may revisit deals made under tariff threats. Not all are celebrating. Some domestic industries fear renewed foreign competition without tariff protection. The economic legacy will be mixed: relief for many, new challenges for others. The marketplace is entering a period of rapid adjustment and uncertainty. This ruling is a watershed moment for the separation of powers, reaffirming that Congress, not the president, controls taxation and trade. The court embraced the major questions doctrine, requiring clear congressional authorization for actions of vast economic impact. IEEPA's silence on tariffs doomed the administration's case, signaling that vague statutes can't justify sweeping executive action. Future presidents will need congressional approval for broad trade measures, shifting power back to the legislative branch. The decision challenges Congress to draft laws with greater clarity and to review emergency powers statutes. It may slow executive action but promises more democratic, stable policymaking. The balance of power has been reset, with Congress called to take a more active role. Legal experts hailed the decision as a return to constitutional norms and predictability in trade law. Georgetown's Jennifer Hillman says the ruling restores legislative control over tariffs and prevents misuse of emergency powers. Small business owners like Victor Schwartz see it as a victory for economic stability and the rule of law. Multinational corporations express cautious optimism, hoping for a more stable, rules-based trading environment. However, some domestic manufacturers and unions lament the loss of tariff protections, fearing renewed foreign competition. The decision is celebrated by those seeking clarity and fairness, but criticized by those who saw tariffs as vital for American industry. The ruling's impact is felt across the economy, from local entrepreneurs to global supply chains. The debate over trade, jobs, and executive power is far from over. This Supreme Court decision is more than a policy reversal, it's a defining moment for American constitutional law. The court reaffirmed that only Congress can tax and shape commerce, setting a precedent against executive overreach. The nation now faces the challenge of unwinding tariffs and rebuilding strained trade relationships. The ruling offers a chance to move toward more stable, collaborative trade policy grounded in democratic legitimacy. It's a reminder that checks and balances are real, empowering citizens and businesses to hold leaders accountable. The story of this case is still unfolding, raising vital questions about the future of presidential power and congressional oversight. What do you think about this historic ruling? Share your thoughts below.